Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's HFTP virtual education session, Lowering Merchant Service Fees, Improve Your Bottom Line. Credit card merchant fees are a necessary evil when it comes to accepting payments for businesses. As more consumers shift to carrying plastic in their pockets, it is necessary to understand just how much these credit card merchant fees can add up and affect your bottom line. Learn innovative strategies to reduce credit card processing fees and keep more money in your pocket without having to disrupt your day-to-day operations. Our speaker today is Patrick. He brings years of management and leadership experience to the table. He strives in building strong knowledge to help businesses across all industries reduce cost. And I'll hand it over to Patrick and let himself give a little bit more of an introduction of who he is and merchant cost consulting. So with further ado, I will go ahead and let Patrick get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brittany. Really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining here today. Again, my name is Patrick McClellan. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Merchant Cost Consulting, and we're here to talk about the good old credit card processing world and how we can help to potentially reduce your fees, a little bit more education about credit card processing and how you can, overall improve your bottom line. So we can get right into it. So a few learning objectives for this webinar. We want to try to learn the average cost and what you should pay to be accepting credit and debit cards. And we can show you how to simply do this by calculating your total effective rate and what that should look like. We're going to try to identify some different factors that contribute to higher credit card processing fees, like the way that you're accepting cards, whether it's keyed in or versus swiped, and then go over some different pricing structures in the industry, as well as some avoidable fees. And then at the end, we'll get into some practical strategies to reduce these fees and how to avoid some other fees. So, I know it's a pretty dry subject, but we'll try to keep it as light and as easy as possible. And again, feel free to reach out with any questions during. Then we'll do a Q&A afterwards as well. So here at Merchant Cost Consulting, we were founded in 2016. We're HQ'd out of Boston, Massachusetts. I've been with the business since 2016 as well. I joined shortly after the inception of the business. And our team is made up of strictly all payment industry experts. And we used to work for a credit card processor here in Boston. And that's where we really learned the ins and the outs of the credit card processing industry. But as we moved our way up within the company and over time, we learned that there's a lot of deceptive practices and tactics that are used, from the very beginning, from when signing up a new merchant, there's not a lot of fees or transparency that's brought up during the underwriting process. And then after time, there's a lot of fee increases, pricing increases, and hidden fees over time that these processors like to add in. So that's why we decided to start Merchant Cost Consulting to help businesses get a better understanding of their current processing environment, what they're currently paying, and hopefully saving them the business along the way, because we saw that there was quite a big need in that area. So there's a lot of processors out there, but not a lot of people on the cost reduction and consulting side. And we don't have any affiliation with this specific processor or any vendor, so we don't align or have any preference of different processors, as I know there are many out there in the hospitality industry. Just a brief overview of what we do here at Merchant Cost Consulting. So overall, we're hired to negotiate, audit, and optimize credit card processing fees for our clients. And our services don't require the client to change from their current processor or software system. Everything does remain in place, as again, we're not a processor ourselves. We're strictly an advocate to help businesses renegotiate and optimize their fees with their current or their existing vendors. Strictly on that cost reduction side, and doesn't disrupt any day-to-day operations or affect the relationship with the current processor. So if there's any sort of gateway integration, software integration, or if you have your processor integrated with a POS system, our services does not disrupt those relationships whatsoever. And how we do this for our clients is we use our data analytics and industry knowledge to both do this renegotiation and the optimization of the credit card processing fees. And we essentially know what the fair market value is and what a business in the hospitality industry should be paying. And that's what kind of gives us the ability to drive everything down to the bottom line. When we have discussions with processors, we essentially know what the kind of the bogus fees are, what's real, what fees can and can't be lowered. And that's what gives us the leverage to make sure the business is not being overcharged overall on their merchant fees. So that would lead us in, Brittany, if you want to put out question number 1.
Absolutely. All right. Question number 1 is, what is most important to you when it comes to credit card processing? Price, customer service, technology, or security? And we'll give everyone 30, 45 seconds to go ahead and get their answers logged in. Kind of all over the board, Patrick. And once I end the poll, I'll share it so you can kind of see what those responses look like. Awesome. Looks like everyone responded. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Oh, a few more coming in. Anyone else? Last minute? Awesome. Okay, I'm going to end it and I'm going to share the results so everyone can see it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I know security is a big factor, and we'll get into that a little bit later about security and making sure you're taking cards in the most safe and secure manners. Pricing obviously is very important as well. And that's what we'll get into, and hopefully being able to drive that down and make sure you're not being overcharged on the merchant service fees. So to continue on, just a brief overview kind of about the payment industry itself. And overall, the payments industry is largely unregulated. And what I mean by that is that there's really no cap on what processors can charge. There's so many different processors out there. There's not any laws or regulations that say you're only allowed to charge this much, and they cap that like they do in other countries. So that's why we see there's a lot of different, because it's unregulated, there's a lot of different overcharging that happens in the industry, especially in the United States. And then there's all sorts of new regulations in different industries with the surcharging and cashback programs. It seems to be changing every day, is the legality behind it, what you can and can't do. And then the statements themselves, if you've ever seen one, they're very complicated and hard to understand. And this is done on purpose. It's to create this kind of confusion. As you can see, there's a lot of different line items with may or may not know it, but there's a lot of hidden and masks fees. So it's hard to decipher exactly what you should be paying. And then there's so many different types of pricing structures out there. So it's hard to decipher what exactly is going to be the best for your business. And processors, they do have a tendency to raise the rates 2 to 3 times a year. All processors have some sort of pricing increase, whether it's just to make themselves more profitable because they know that they can get away with it, or it's to adjust with what's going on in the economy, with inflation and just their costs going up themselves. So we typically see that most rate increases do occur at the end of the year. It's to make their, again, more profitable, making their shareholders happy. Just like you're an insurance bill or a cable bill, almost on steroids. It's something inevitable. It will happen. So it's very important to keep an eye out on this and take a look at your processing statements every month to see if it has increased over time. And then, again, billing errors, they're inevitable as well. Even some of the biggest banks out there, they do make mistakes, whether it's putting in something incorrectly, adding another number. It does happen, whether it's done purposefully or not. It's just whether they get caught or not. And that's why having someone maybe audit your statements or taking a closer look into this can be very important. And some more just an overview of the industry, kind of more of how it works and how fees are charged. So you have the card brands themselves. So Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. They assess different fees depending on the different type of card that's being used. They pass those fees along to these processors. The processors are the ones that send the money to and from bank accounts, and they had a markup on top of that. That's how they make their money, and then they eventually pass those fees along to the merchants. And there's three main types of pricing structures that are used in merchant services. The first one's tiered pricing. This is where cards can basically downgrade to what are called from qualified to mid-qualified or non-qualified. These carry different surcharges attached to them, and this really isn't recommended for any business. Processors, they do this to try to simplify things, and they group transactions together based on the different types of cards as well as the risk. So it starts the lowest or the cheapest being your qualified cards, which are cards that are taken face to face in person, your debit cards, and then non-rewards credit cards, which there are very few of. You can mostly see that cards nowadays have some sort of rewards attached to them, and that's where you get into the mid-qualified cards, where there's an added charge on top of the qualified charge, and these are cards that are not present. They're rewards cards, cashback credit cards, which probably a majority in the hospitality industry would fall in that mid-qualified area. And then as well as non-qualified, you have your higher end rewards cards, your corporate cards, and then international cards. So your non-qualified is always the highest. And again, this is a pricing structure you want to try to avoid. If you ever see on your statements that cards have any mid-qualified or non-qualified surcharges, it's best to look into interchange plus, which is the next structure. And this is going to be the most competitive. This is what you really should be on. And an interchange is another name for the wholesale charged from Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. And there's over 700 different types of interchange rates, meaning that they assess a specific rate, as low as your debit card at 0.05%. Anywhere, and then you have all of your different rewards cards from different banks, which each carry its own unique rate to it. But again, that's that wholesale charge. So they just pass that along. And these rates are, for the most part, set in stone. They're not negotiable, but there are ways that you can reduce these types of charges. But if you were ever to call the processor and say, hey, you want the interchange rates to be reduced, unfortunately, it is impossible. Though those are set in stone, and they're just passed along as they're assessed by the card brands themselves. And then there's a small markup on top of that, the interchange rate. That's where the plus pricing comes from, which is a percentage and then a per transaction fee from the processor. So that's what you want to look out for, making sure you're on a competitive interchange plus pricing structure. And then you have your flat rate. Think like your Squares of the world, Square being one of a processor POS systems. It's a bit more expensive, but it's very transparent, and basically it blends all of the fees to one charge, one fixed flat rate, regardless of the type of card that's being used. And this is probably best for businesses that are charging or processing less than $5,000 in monthly sales. It could be beneficial if you want to just know exactly what you're paying without all of the complexity behind it. Then flat rate is probably for you, but again, it's going to be on the higher ends. And then as far as what you should be paying all in the hospitality industry, you can easily calculate. Oh, sorry about that. You can easily calculate this by looking at your total fees and dividing that by the total sales. And that's how you get this what's called the total cost of processing, your effective rate. And this should be right at about 2.5%. Obviously it's going to depend on a couple of different factors, the way or the majority that you're accepting cards, whether it is card present or keyed in, if you're accepting international cards, if the processor you're using is integrated with the software, there could be added fees, but that's where we typically should see 2.25% to 2.5% all in is where you price that. That would be considered very competitive. And if it's more than that, chances are there could be some inefficiencies or discrepancies in the pricing, and that can be improved. So maybe good to look back at your contract just to make sure that things match up. And seeing if you're over time, if that effective rate has increased, then it's probably time to call your processor to get the rates back down to what you originally signed up at.
Hey, Patrick, real quick, can I shoot out a question for you?
Sure.
We have someone who asked, we own manage branded hotels and we have to go with their approved processor. So how can we ensure that they are accurate and not charged over?
Yeah, great question. And we see that all the time. It's making sure that you're taking a look at the contract that you originally signed with that processor and matching that up with your current statement. So making sure that the discount rate and the per transaction fees that they align, because sometimes or over time that these processors can have those different increases, and that's where you can just bring the contract to the processor to get the rates back down if you did have that increase occur. So that's a great question, but it does sometimes happen. So yeah, continue on. Pretty good time to bring up question number 2 as well.
Absolutely. Question number 2, everyone should see it on their screen. What should the average total cost of processing be in the hospitality industry? We'll see who's been watching Patrick's slides over the past few minutes. Awesome. We'll give everyone about 10-15 more seconds to get their answer logged in. And again, that question is, what should the average total cost of processing be in the hospitality industry? About 5 more seconds for the last few individuals who haven't put their answer in yet. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to end that and I will share the results. There you go, Patrick.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, for the majority, people got this right. It's at the your total or your average total cost of processing, so it should be around that 2.25% to 2.5%. You know, there could definitely be some reasons, even if you are on a very competitive pricing structure, where you'll still be at 2.75%, but typically anything above that is where there could be those inefficiencies or different areas for improvement. But overall, most people did get that right. So here's a list of some of the fees that basically can be improved upon or negotiated with your processor. So it's important to kind of, if you have a chance to speak with your processor, to go over these types of fees and how you can easily reduce them or avoid them. So the discount rate and the per transaction fee, that's going to be the markup from the processor. And that's where you want to make sure that that's at a very discounted, a low rate that can be negotiable. So making sure that that's at a very competitive price. And that's important to take a look at. Again, that's going to be on your interchange plus pricing structure, and see if you can bring that down. And then you have your monthly and your annual fees. Different processors have all sorts of different monthly and annual fees at different price points. You always just want to make sure you're taking a look at those, making sure that you're not enrolled in any added programs that the processor may have put you in. So it's important just to take a look at those, as most of them can be either lowered or removed. And we talked about the interchange rates. Again, not negotiable, but they can be lowered. And these are some areas where you can help to lower or reduce the interchange rates. And it's things like adding in an address verification system. And what this is, it's the address verification system. It verifies that the billing address entered matches the address on file with the cardholder, which is very important. And it's a great way to make sure you're getting the lowest interchange rate assessed to each card, that there's not a surcharge on top of that, but it's also a great way to help prevent fraud for card not present transactions. You want to make sure you're settling batches each day. Most should be set up for automatic batches. But if not, if you have to manually do it at the end of the day, you can either set it up for automatic, but just make sure that it is done that day, because if you do wait, interchange rates can be downgraded. It can be as high as 0.50% or 50 basis points higher than doing it the same day. Debit payments, you always want to try to encourage debit. I know it's kind of tough, and having your customer choose what type of card that they want to use. But if you advertise or prefer or have the ability to communicate with your customers that you do want to take debit cards, that's the lowest interchange rate, and it's very cost effective. So if you have the ability to do that, and then same with manual entry versus swiped entry. I know sometimes it's inevitable. You have to take the card either over the phone or online. It's impossible to get the card face to face. But if you're booking if a customer is booking a hotel room or a tea time per se, there's a way for them to enter their credit card information online. You can authorize that card, and then until they actually check in for their room or for their tea time, you can get the card on file and then swipe it for the amount that's owed. So you're still only charging them one time, but instead of being charged for the manual entry, you're being charged the swipe fee, which can be anywhere from 0.20% to 0.40% lower when it comes to keyed in versus swipe transactions. Chargeback fees. I know obviously in hospitality, they are inevitable. They do come up, but again, there's ways to either lower these fees or just to try to avoid them altogether. An important thing to do is, making sure that the name that appears on your customer's bank statements matches up with your DVA name, and it's not the incorporated name. That can cause some confusion. And when they see that they stayed at XYZ hotel, but some ink comes up on their bank statement, they may call their bank and dispute that charge, saying they're not sure what it is. And that's where a lot of chargeback issues can come from. Also, making sure that the terms and conditions you have are very clear. Any sort of refund policies, exchange policies, that they're cleared and laid out, just because in the instance that a chargeback does occur, if you have something that in your terms and conditions that can fight back against that, it definitely helps your chances of winning that chargeback. Card authorization, using that address verification system, taking down the customer's address to make sure it matches up with the one that they have on file. As well as checking their ID, checking the customer's ID, making sure that the card they are using matches up with the name on the ID can be very helpful in fighting chargebacks as well. And then providing invoices at the end of their stay or at the checkout process. Invoices is always helpful in keeping them on file for yourself as well. Again, as a proof when you may have to fight a chargeback. Providing all of this documentation is very helpful in giving you the ability to win that chargeback, because we know there are many customers out there. They'll still call their bank, dispute a charge made on their card, knowing or sometimes knowing that they can get away with it because their bank will side with them. So again, something that isn't inevitable, but very important. And the chargeback fees themselves can also be negotiable. So your per instance chargeback, there's an additional charge on top of that from the processors that can be negotiated down as well if you are running into a lot of them. But if it's something that's occurring frequently, you want to try to work with your processor to see exactly why that may be occurring. Next is your PCI compliance. The PCI compliance or payment card industry compliance is very important. And it's basically completing the questionnaire or the assessment and going through the scan process, making sure that cards are being stored safely and securely. and just making sure you are compliant within the industry, that you're taking this information properly, you're not storing any information where either your system can be hacked into or your customer's credit card information can be obtained. And for most part, all processors are PCI compliant. They help you get there. It's just a matter of completing the questionnaire and actually doing the scans to make sure everything does pass. This can avoid monthly, quarterly, as well as annual fees. PCI non-compliance fees, they can definitely add up, as there are added monthly fees involved, anywhere from $60 to $150 per month. So very important, to make sure that you are compliant, you are completing this. And then you want to take a look at also your merchant category code, your MCC or your SIC code, making sure that that matches up properly with your processor, making sure that they have you down as a, whether it's a golf course, a hotel, making sure that they don't have you as a business that you are not, because that can also involve different downgrades. You could be paying higher fees or interchange rates if you're not categorized correctly. So making sure your merchant category code is basically assessed appropriately with the processor.
And Patrick, real quick, I'm gonna shoot out another question for you. How do customers using virtual cards affect the credit card fees?
So that's going to be depending on the card brand. They have it's going to be the same as the type of card that you originally have. So for myself, I have a Visa Chase rewards card, and then it automatically is going to turn that into a virtual card, so I can automatically make the payments online. The interchange rates are the same as it would be with the Chase rewards card. So even though it's considered a virtual card, you're still going to get they're still going to be charging the same rate, so it does align.
So thank you.
All right. And these are just some example statements that we came across. I know there's all sorts of different processing statements out there, so it's hard there's not one universal statement, but these are some areas where if they are showing the rates next to, it may say that the category may be interchange plus or interchange rates, and it will have all these different line items. And when you take a look at this, it's almost like it's in another language or it's in hieroglyphics, and again, very hard to read. But we know that VS Rewards 1, the Visa Rewards card level 1, that the actual interchange rate is not 1.7% plus 15 cents per transaction. It's actually 1.6% plus 10 cents per transaction. So we were able to catch this from this processor because they're basically padding the interchange rate. It's something it's a very common practice that's used. It's kind of making it seem to be deceptive, and not a lot of people have the access or the resources as to what the actual interchange rate should be. So these are all marked up above the actual cost. So that's something we try to look out for. That's a common practice from these processors. And then the next box down, you'll see these also should be. This is just a common error that was basically should have been a credit back to the business or the merchant because of some sort of refund where it shouldn't be listed as a charge. So anytime you see CR, meaning credit, we want to make sure that that's being actually credited back to the merchant, not charged again, which does happen in the processor system. This was entered incorrectly. So again, we want to make sure we're taking a look out for these types of line items, so we can call the processor to get this fixed and get those refunds. And then there's a common practice from processors is that they will actually just put in fees because they can, again, making themselves more profitable. A discount expense for credits isn't really a charge for anything. It's just adding a line item on there, calling it is what it is. And most businesses will see this not knowing that what's real and what's not, unfortunately.
Hey, Patrick, real quick while you're on the screen, how does one ensure that their company is charging? Oh, sorry, another question. How do I ensure that my company is charging the correct amount and surcharges to our customers for the privilege of using a credit or debit card? Is it a fixed percentage?
How do I ensure that? So that's going to be, you're going to have that conversation with your processor. This is something that, again, there's a lot of moving parts and legality behind it and depends state by state. So you want to work with your processor to make sure that you are doing everything correctly. They will charge a fixed percent. It's capped at 3%. That was a recent charge from Visa. And you just want to make sure you're aligning with everything, meaning you're posting that you are charging a surcharge. The fee is being passed along to the customer. But it typically is a fixed percentage, but it can be adjusted. Just know that it can't be anything higher than 3%.
Awesome. And one other question is, where can we get a list of interchange fees from?
Great question. This can be found, it's public knowledge. It can be found just by Googling interchange rates. One of the more reputable sites is burlingtonbankcard.com, and this lists out all of the accurate interchange rates. So it's good to kind of have that list handy so you can kind of compare, making sure the interchange charges you are being charged match up. But again, it can be a lot, and it can be overwhelming just because, again, there are 700 different types of interchange rates out there, so it can be tough to align, making sure you're being charged the right interchange fees.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just another example of some fees and a different statement that we see. Just a common billing error is that even on our system or our team will catch something like this is when looking at everything line item by line item, we'll see that there is a line item where this business was charged on $0 of sales. So we have to figure out why exactly this was charged, because it obviously is something that shouldn't be on here. So again, looking out for discrepancies like this on your statement, and then again, calling the processor to get this sort of fee refunded because of this billing error. And this is a common practice we see as well with our process. So we'll do an initial analysis on a processing statement. We'll see that some of these rates are inflated, these different line items. We know exactly what they should be. And that's when speaking with the processor, we can get these fees negotiated and back down. Some to what the standard market value is, others kind of below that market value. And then you'll see in March, we caught that the fees were high. In May, we were able to get the rates lowered for this merchant. And then we monitored the account in December, noticing that most of these fees were right back up to where they were before, sometimes even more than what they were in March. So this is a very common practice from these processors, again, having these sort of increases occur towards the end of the year, again, to make themselves more profitable. And just a quick case study from the Rosewood Hotel Group, who has been our client for the past 4 years now. They were using an integrated processor integrated directly with their POS system, as well as their online gateway. So for taking payments online or over the phone. And their pain point was that they obviously didn't want to make any changes due to all of the equipment costs, the time involved. They just didn't have the resources where they could allocate to this project. It's a big learning curve, changing systems over. So they decided to reach out to Merchant Cost Consulting, and we reviewed a recent month or batch of processing statements, and we were able to find some of those discrepancies and inefficiencies where they were being overcharged in many different areas. So they engaged with our services, we contacted their processor, and we were able to reduce their fees by 30% plus per month. And we also looked at their contract, found other discrepancies, and we were able to obtain 6 months of refunds for those overcharges. So we were able to backtrack 6 months and obtain a fair share of refunds for them as well. Again, with our services, they didn't have to make any changes. Their current processor stayed the same. The online gateway, as well as the integrated software, all stayed in place, and it didn't affect the relationship with their processor whatsoever either. And then, as far as an ongoing basis, we monitor their account monthly to ensure that, looking out for those different increases. In the past 4 years, we've probably caught 4 or 5 different increases where we've been able to go in to get them removed again and refunded as well. Our system, we both have a tool that we use, so it flags the increases or the added fees, and then we have an operations team that takes a look at that as well, just to look out for any sort of line items where there could be improvement, and just making sure that Rosewood is paying the most competitive rates and fees in the industry every single month. And then we also help them out with their PCI compliance, completing the questionnaire for them, making sure that the scans do pass, avoiding any additional fees, and obviously making sure that they are accepting cards safely and securely, and then helping them with chargeback issues as well. Again, like I said, in the hospitality industry, they do occur. Not to say that every single one of those chargebacks is going to be one, but if we can help them get a better chance of winning those chargebacks, gathering all the proper documentation, talking with the processor about why this chargeback occurred, but then presenting them the proper documentation, again, just giving them a better chance to alleviate some of those chargeback issues.
Awesome. And Patrick, real quick, there's another question
Yeah.
out here. Do the discount rewards type credit card issuers have a interchange rates designed to make up for the cost of providing rewards that is recovered by the rate charged to merchants that accept these cards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's exactly how it works. So if someone has the flyer miles or the cashback rewards, so Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express, they're not going to be the ones that pay for those types of rewards. That's where they pass them along to the merchant. And that's where you'll see those higher interchange charges because of that. So, everyone loves getting their rewards for big purchases. But then unfortunately, that's where it is put on the merchant to kind of essentially pay for those different types of rewards.
Awesome. And then does it matter if you have a small amount of your revenues on credit cards?
No, absolutely not. I mean, all of this still affects the bottom line, and it doesn't matter who you're processing with, whether it's small or large. There are always ways to improve or negotiate these merchant fees.
And then our biggest costs are the non-qualified fees charged through our bank. They do not provide any details as they state fees are being charged on behalf of the processor. How can we ensure that fees are correct?
Yeah, so it can be tough because there are processors or banks out there that don't provide a detailed or a detailed report, but you want to see exactly why these charges are being downgraded to non-qualified. What information are you not obtaining from your customers, and what exactly can be done to avoid those non-qualified charges. Again, making sure that you're on that right type of pricing structure, making sure that you're on Interchange Plus to avoid those types of downgrades. But mostly these processors should be able to help with the non-qualified charges and why they're being downgraded.
And then Pete has a follow-up. So can a merchant selectively block taking a specific discount reward card that may be a high cost to merchant?
Unfortunately not. There's no way to block a specific type of card that's being used. If you're taking Visa, there's no way for a system to recognize whether it's a high-end rewards card versus a card without rewards. But that's why you see that a lot of businesses may not accept American Express because they are a little bit higher in terms of their charges. So your system can block your processor can block American Express charges, but it can't necessarily block a certain type of reward card from being used.
And then I've had a few questions, but we have some individuals wondering if the PowerPoint is something that you could share afterwards that they could refer back to.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to share this. Yes. If you just wanted to reach out to myself, again, my contact information is right here, stating that you'd like a copy of this, I'd be more than happy to send this over.
Awesome. So yes, anyone who's asked me so far, if you want to email Patrick, he can send you a copy of the PowerPoint, and any other information you have as well. And I guess while we let everyone kind of ask any other questions they have, I was going to launch out that last poll for everyone. Your final question, Patrick, if that's good with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't really get to it, but yeah, if you want to ask that.
Yes, and then we'll get back to some questions. But real quick, everyone, the third and final poll, interchange rates can be negotiated. It's just a true or false question. So go ahead and drop your answer. And I know a few other questions have come in, so we will get back to those questions in just a minute. Ooh, that sounds pretty split. Very interesting. Give everyone about 10, 15 more seconds to get your answer logged in. All right, a few more seconds. Okay, I'm gonna end it. Oh, there's a few more coming, sorry. Okay, I'm ending it and I'm gonna share it. So here you go, Patrick.
Awesome. So the answer is actually false. And again, I know this can be confusing, but interchange rates cannot be negotiated, but they can be lowered. There are ways to lower these fees in the way you're accepting the cards. Um, so again, that is false.
Awesome. And I guess to go back to a few more questions we've got here. Jessica said, after MCC initial analysis, how long does MCC continue monitoring for backsliding with processors?
So our initial engagement period is typically for 36 months. But so we if you were to engage with our services, we monitor the account, looking out for any sort of those increases for 36 months, because that gives us time to make sure we're working with the processor to get the rates to be set in stone for as long as possible. Sometimes even if you do sign a rate lock for 12 months, there still could be areas where they can make some adjustments to their pricing. And that's kind of in the small print, the fine print and the terms and conditions from these processors, that they have the ability to adjust the pricing at any given point.
Awesome. And I know a lot of people have mentioned how this has been a great presentation, so we do appreciate that, Patrick. I did have someone reach out about what you charge for your services. I don't know if that's something maybe you want to contact Pam directly about, if that's in more discussion, or if you have a general overview of what you want to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we're a contingency-based firm. So the only way we're compensated is by sharing in the savings that we're able to obtain for our clients. We don't charge any, there's nothing for the initial analysis of the statements and, to begin with our services. It's simply just by sharing in the savings that we're able to obtain for our clients. No sort of extra monthly fees. So it's a win-win and a mutually beneficial relationship for our clients.
Awesome. Let's see. Anyone else have any last minute questions? It looks like everyone's just saying thank you so much, Patrick. And yes, we do appreciate you getting on here today and giving this presentation.
Of course.
Again, if you do have more specific questions, please jot down Patrick's information. He'd be happy to get with you, share the PowerPoint slides, etc. This was recorded, so we will have the recording live on our website for you guys to refer back to as well. But obviously, Patrick Live is probably a better reference than his recording. So do use him and his resources and merchant cost consulting as you please. And then one other thing is that if you are collecting your continuing education credits today, please note that you will need to self-report your credit for this webinar. An email with the CPE credit certification information will be sent within 24 hours. So just save that email for your records, as I know you guys always do. But yeah, with that, Patrick, any closing thoughts or anything? I know everyone's very thankful of your presentation today, so.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again, Brittany, for having me. We've had a great relationship with the HFTP and helping members with this expense. But if anyone has any questions, or if you'd like an analysis of any of your current processing statements, be more than happy to take a look. But again, my contact information is right there. So feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Will the recording of the webinar? Yes. The recording should be available tomorrow for those who are asking. And I will share that. It'll be on our website, but I'll share the link with everyone. Absolutely. You're welcome. Any other questions as people are dropping off? It looks like a lot of thank yous. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it so much.
No, thank you.